do bounce and grind really mean? And how do they affect your wedge performance? Today I'm going to be testing out the new Mizuno Pro wedge range with loads of different bounce and grind options to show you why it's so important and how you can pick the right ones for your game. So today I'm testing out the brand new Mizuno Pro T1 and T3 wedges, but I really wanted to do this from a standpoint of what bounce and what grinds work for different golfers and what options we have available, because I think it's a topic that's still quite misunderstood, and knowing more about it could really help you pick the right wedges. So before we get into the actual review and do some testing, I want to just break down what the bounce and what the grind actually is. So the bounce is the angle created between the leading edge and then the lowest point of the grind, or the trailing edge if that is there. This angle forces the club to come out of the turf quicker and easier and really helps with a consistent strike. Now generally you'll hear people say that if you're a steeper golfer, more bounce will help, because if you're coming in steep into the ground, the club's going to help you out by bouncing up out of the ground more. But one thing you might not know is if you increase bounce, it actually affects your ball flight as well as your turf interaction. So more bounce will actually help bring the ball flight down, whereas less bounce is more likely to send your ball flight up. This can be quite helpful in your stronger lofted wedges in terms of picking something that flights in the right window. So in the past I've hit my wedges quite high, so in my strongest lofted wedge, so my 48, my 50, my 46, whatever I've been playing at that time, I've actually had that in a much higher bounce to help bring down the peak height of those shots, which is going to help it spin a little more and be more controlled in the wind. Now generally what you will see is as we add more bounce, the leading edge sits a little higher. So sometimes you can get a club that has a lot of bounce and you feel like it's quite hard to open the face up and get clean contact because of just how that leading edge is sitting up above the ground. Now the difference with grind is that's kind of the shaping of the sole, and what it is the removal of material in different areas to improve turf interaction. This is generally going to increase versatility because you have the ability to hit loads more different shots. Now although the two are different things, grind and bounce do link together to cause different things. So generally if you had a grind that promoted a more open face, that would add bounce. Likewise, if you had a grind that promoted a more standard, neutral or shut face, that would take bounce off. I think a really important thing to think about with grinds is not just having one in your set. You can create a full wedge set which is really versatile by having different options in different clubs, so you can kind of build up a matrix of shots that you can hit with all your different wedges. Now the reason it's really important to get the right bounce and grind is it's going to allow you to have optimal contact, that's going to give you the best control, and actually it can affect your spin numbers too. There was a really interesting Golf Digest article I was reading recently, and that was with Jacob Clark from Ping, and he was saying actually getting the wrong bounce and grind for your game and your swing can cost you up to 2,000 RPM of spin. That's a serious amount of control you're just throwing away, so it's really worth going out and testing loads of different options before you pick up some new wedges. So let's get into the clubs we've got here today. I've got 3 different bounce and grind options from the Mizuno range. These are all the T1 model, and then later I've got a T3, and we're going to compare like for like a T1 and a T3 of the same grind and bounce. We've got a 60 which has 10 bounce, and that's in the C grind. Now it's worth noting all 3 of the grinds we've got here are more of the aggressive shaping, so they're more on the versatile end of the Mizuno spectrum. So we've got a C, V and an X, a C probably being the most standard of the ones here, but you can still see it has quite an aggressive relief on this. If you're wanting something more standard, so something for like wide using my 48 for like a full swing shot, you'd go for the S. That's more of a full sole and it has a really straight bevel relief, so it's pretty flat on the bottom. That's going to be something you use for literally standard stock chip shots, chip and runs and full swing shots. Next to that they have the M, which has a little bit more relief on it, but it's still a pretty full sole, and that has quite a lot of bounce. They actually have a new P grind for this year too, which sits just above the M. It has a little bit more relief, but it's also called P because it has plus effective bounce, so it plays like it has more bounce than it does. Then we've got C, V and X, which get more aggressive, more relief, more material ground off the heel and the toe, and that's just going to make these easier to open up, hit different shots. Just pausing for a second to give you a chance to hit that subscribe button. Go on, you've got nothing else to do right now. Over 80% of people watching my channel aren't currently subscribed, and actually having that bigger subscriber number really helps in terms of where I can go to film videos and also what equipment I can get to give you some great reviews. So it's really all to help you out in the long run. So please hit that subscribe button, and while you're there, you might as well drop this video a like and drop us a comment about what else you want to see. Right, back to it. Now what I want to do here is hit a few shots with each one. I'm going to talk about the difference in turf interaction and what I feel through the ground. And I also want you to look at the ball flight, see the differences, because generally what you'll find is there's always a model that's more consistent for you, and it might not always be this typical story of if you're shallow, you need less bounce, if you're steep, you need more bounce. Generally, good contact with the wedge is like the 3 to 4 grooves up from the bottom, because that's going to give us the optimal height and spin. So when we're hitting these, that's really all we're looking for. Can we get there consistently? What's the spin? What's the height like? And are we repeating that over and over again? We don't want a wedge that's different every time. So we're going to start with the 10C. In terms of bounce, 10 would be like at the higher side of moderate. We're probably looking at like 7 to 10 of bounce being in that moderate slot in the middle. So in terms of what swing or what conditions this might work for, it'd be anyone with a fairly neutral swing, but also in fairly neutral conditions. So not too wet, not too heavy ground, but also not really firm. We have quite a wide effective bounce here, but we do have quite a bit of taper on the heel and toe. What that means is we should be able to open this up a little bit, still have a little bit of relief and not feel like the leading edge is sitting really high. Now first I'm just going to hit some stock shots with these square and see how we get on and if there's a strong difference in ball flight. Check what the laser is saying for distance. 45 yards. Gosh, that stopped quick. The new groove's obviously working. Gonna have to dig my towel out to keep these nice and clean. Shout out to the guys at Bombs Away Golf for sending me this. I love it, and it's black so it doesn't get like muddy stains all over it like those bright white ones do. Now for this shot on this turf, I really liked how that played. My divot's fairly shallow but really consistent at both sides, which is something I'd look for. Now the big thing with these wedges is it's not just about one shot, it's about the consistency of the shot. So now you're getting the same divot, the same flight, the same control each time. These wedges feel super soft and they're nipping really nicely on that green. So in terms of consistency there, my divots were literally all identical in like depth and width, which is really nice. I did hit the shots a little bit different in terms of total distance. So there was a slight variation in like launch and height because of that, but my height was within a yard all the time. My launch did vary by 4 degrees, but on that last one I definitely added a little extra loft. The spins stayed between 4,765 and 5,970, which I think is a good amount for a shot of this length. But overall what I would say is for these conditions I think this is a good option for this situation where I'm just hitting a stock shot. I'm at La Cala out in Spain. It is January, so it's not as firm as it would be in the middle of the summer. Like there's a little bit of grass, but it is still quite dry. So it's not like what we've got back in England where it's just wet, muddy, the grass is really heavy, and that would probably suit something with more bounce. Let's swap into the V now. Also, how groovy is this blue finish? We've got one of every finish here, so a black, a blue and a chrome. I love this. It's so nice, although I kind of wish the blue was on the grooves as well. It looks quite different when you put it down this way. Now this is a more aggressive grind, but we're not really going to use that from a stock position, but it does have 12 bounce instead of 10. Now generally if you have too much bounce, your impact will move lower on the face, so it'll be interesting to see here if I feel that and if my strike changes at all. Love that blue colourway though. Also I really like the shaping they've done here, a slightly taller at the hosel this year, and also they've changed the lines on the front and the overall shaping so the leading edge and the top line look a bit straighter. Oh, that was nippy. Did you see how much more that spun? It's quite interesting because my divot's got a lot shallower there. I didn't particularly think the first ones were that deep, but it's noticeable the change there. I think I was out of the zone there for Skytrack, so it's not picked it up. Oh yeah, it's more back here. That's a shame. Such a nice strike. I actually felt like I could feel that riding up the face more, which is interesting. That felt very nippy. Still in a very similar ballpark range at this moment, and actually the strike felt really good. I wouldn't say these are the 3 grinds that are most exceptionally different from each other, although the next one we've got has a lot less bounce. That will be interesting. That definitely popped up a little high. I didn't get that kind of shot with the other wedge, so that would be just like a flag to me to check if that happens again. That one was really nice though. So there's a few things that happened there. My spin went down over 1,000 RPM, which is very interesting. And also I was launching the ball consistently higher, so about 1 yard to 2 yards higher on all those shots. So for me, I think at this moment in time, that's a club that's just giving me a bit too much launch and not enough spin, and is not necessarily getting enough control. It's not bad and it's still very workable, but these are the little things you want to be looking for when you're trying to figure out what grind is best for you. Really, the most consistent wedge shots are ones that come out quite low but spin a lot. Okay, so last up we've got the X. This has only got 6 pounds, so this is really good for firm conditions. Think links, think the Open Championship. It's also actually really good out of firm, compact bunkers. A few people have commented asking what to do out of them, and actually having a specialist wedge is a good one. Generally, people say these are better for people with shallower swing speeds because they're not having to come like in and out of the turf as much. I generally am quite shallow, so it'll be interesting to see how this works. I have used a wedge with very low bounce before, and it's great if you're chipping it well, but it can be sometimes hard to get consistent control. Generally, bounce does help you out a bit with contact, and obviously there's not that much of it here. I just love how it opens up, though. You can literally open that all the way, and the leading edge is basically still flat, which is so pure. So that was definitely a tad thin. There wasn't much to help me out on a bad strike there. Actually still pretty good spin and launch numbers though. But that's a thing I'd be picking up on. What does the strike feel like when you're testing these? You don't want to use something that you're having to work extra hard to chip with, unless it's for a real specialist shot and you have like the space in the bag for that. So if you play a course with really, really firm bunkers, Sunningdale comes to mind because I always think those bunkers are really hard because they're just so compact. Then maybe you would opt for a club like this literally just for that, if you're facing those bunkers on loads of tournament rounds and that's your home course. But you have to kind of think about how it sits in the rest of the bag and if you have the space to do that. Can you see how this just isn't as consistent? I've had one low, one high, and that kind of shows me it's not got enough bounce, it's just not forgiving enough in this environment and this setting. Maybe it would work if it was really, really firm. Oh no. When you pick a wedge up and it's just ruins your consistency, it's not the one. Okay, that was a stock like pitch shot, just square face. What happens if we want to open the face up? So let's go in the same order, starting with the C with 10 bounce. See how I feel about hitting a flop shot. I actually don't hate it. The leading edge is probably sitting up a couple millimeters, but it's not as excessive as you would expect from 10 bounce. And that's what the grind helps with. This is more ground off in the heel and the toe than like a standard S grind. So it's going to help us out with that. That actually went through the turf really nicely. Obviously we've got a little bit of grass here to help us out. If it was super tight links turf, I'm not sure I'd have wanted to do that. Okay, next we've got the V with 12 bounce. This is more aggressively ground off, so it should feel nice to open up. But how much will the bounce sit there? Probably don't like this quite as much. Feels like it just sits a bit higher. Gonna have to work a bit harder here. Yeah, definitely wasn't as clean. Felt a bit clunkier into the ground. And it wasn't terrible. Definitely wasn't as nice as the first one. Okay, last up, 6X. I think this is where this one's gonna come to light. That just sits so flush to the ground. It's absolutely pure. Just look how nice that was. That's so easy to get under and hit really high shots, and I think I could hit really soft finesse flop shots with this. In fact, let's have a go. There's just no way I could hit shots like that with either of the other two grinds. And I think this is why I recommend you have multiple. For me, this is not the best if I'm hitting a stock shot or chipping, so I shouldn't try to do that with this. If I have space, I should have this as a specialist wedge for around the green. So my 52 and my 54 looks like it needs to be a 10C. And then my 58 could be a lower bounce with a more aggressive grind. Okay, so now we've been through bounce and grinds, let's talk about the two different head options available in this range. So we've just been hitting the T1 in all three of those wedges. As I mentioned, this has had a slight shape change, so we've got a little bit more weight up here, a little bit more in the heel, and the head's just kind of more teardrop shaped. This has quite a sharp leading edge, but then a fairly flat sole. Now, the difference with the T3 is that it's a slightly bigger face profile. It's also got a wider sole, but there's actually more bevel, or it's like more ground off at the front. There's also definitely more offset on this. So with the changes between the two, I'd kind of expect the T3 to be a little bit more forgiving. Now the bevel on the front of this allows the club to just sit a little bit deeper into the turf. That's going to create more of a high bounce situation and help you dig less. So if you're someone who's steep into the ball and digs a lot, this could be the option. Let's hit a couple with this and compare it to the numbers I got with this one and just see if there's a difference in sound, feel, control. Quite surprised at how much bigger this looks actually. I say it has a more rounded profile too. Really nice strike again. This was the grind that I liked, remember, and the same bounce. That actually launched a lot higher for me and meant the descent angle was really steep, but it didn't really spin loads. 2,995, basically 3,000. Obviously it's only a little partial shot, so it's not going to be millions. Stopping nicely on the green there, to be fair. Yeah, that was better. 5,500 spin, 34 launch, 40 descent angle. Pretty in the green there from SkyTrack Plus. It gives you a colour-coded system based on how good or how optimised it thinks your numbers is. Now, I don't think it quite realises here I'm hitting a partial shot, not full 60. So it still thinks my spin's a tad low. I do feel like this might be getting into the turf a little bit easier just because of that bevel on the front. The strikes feel really nice, and that would also make sense why the ball's coming up a little bit higher. You know what, I actually think I'm way more consistent with this head. I couldn't tell you why that is, but the numbers were really good. Those last two shots were almost identical. So that one spun 4,698 on average. The height was 6 yards, which is up there on the highest that I've had, but it was very consistent. It was 6 on every single shot. So that's the most consistent I've been in terms of height so far. But compared to the other club head in the same bounce and grind, this did spin slightly less. So we've gone from 5,358 in the T1 to 4,698 in the T3. There was one that wasn't quite as good in there, but still, I can only go by the numbers. The launch was more consistent with the T3 and it was slightly higher, but overall, they were just both really nice wedges. They both look great, and I think you just need to find a visual that suits your eye. But really, if you suit this bounce and grind, you could probably go into either of these models. It's just about testing them out and seeing which suits your game and also what gives you the most consistent numbers. Now, especially with wedges, you need to make sure you're hitting loads of different variety of shots. Full shots, half pitch shots, chip shots, and just seeing what the consistency is like and which is giving you the best results. Hopefully you like the look of these new wedges. I've certainly enjoyed testing them out on the performance. Hopefully you've learned a bit about bounce and grinds. Let me know if you have any other questions on that. And also, let me know if you'd be brave enough to go for this bright blue look.